So we will start out with a panel that will identify the potential for bike sharing to make a much more increased contribution to the EU's mobility, climate and cycling policies. And for this next panel discussion, I'll be handing over to Professor Malte Ackermann, who is the Professor of Business Administration, in particular with a focus on mobility services at the Nürtingen-Geislingen University for Economy and Environment. Please welcome him with a round loud of applause.
So welcome everyone. So I'd like to introduce my panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Christine from TIA Mobility. Would you like to welcome on stage? Then I'd like to introduce Alexander from DBG Mobility, and I'd like to introduce Mareike from Nextbike, and then Anton from the city of Vilnius. Take your seats. And we want to talk today about caring is sharing. And as everyone knows, we are right now here with the City of Bikes, and we like to bring more people to bike sharing. And I'd like to start with you, Anton. How do we actually do this? And please share your perspective from an East Baltic state.
I mean, what we did, so first of all, we obviously started with infrastructure, and it worked for us, for Vilnius, quite well. So when they say in transport planning, right, you build it and they come, so it works pretty well in every place. So I think having safe infrastructure around the city and safe and connected infrastructure, and the one that everybody would like to ride, whether it's a bike sharing or it's a private bikes or it's other means of mobility. It works pretty well. In our case, we tripled our model's share of cyclists in the last 5 years. So like connecting the infrastructure had 30 kilometers in 2017, and now we have around 170 kilometers of protected cycling infrastructure. So that's a huge investment we did. So that's where we start. Another thing with the sharing schemes in our case was opening the markets to everybody. So we said when it just started, especially with the kick scooters, when it just started, a lot of cities were banning the scooters or banning any micromobility. We as Vilnius City, we said, okay, if you want to come and have us as a sandbox, you can do that, and you can still do that. So guys, if you're willing to do that, please do. It's open. Of course, you have to follow the rules about the parking, about the safety, about informing residents, but it's not like contract-based or whatsoever. So I think this also worked as being very open on how we organize things in our city and being very agile and flexible, seeing the problem and then solving it on a way rather than banning it and then thinking for so long. So being flexible and doing the basics, I think it's important.
Then Mareike, basically the same question for you. So how do we get more people into sharing? What's holding Nextbike back from further growth? What are your challenges?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in with the don'ts. So if you get my advice, don't start with a pilot with only 15 bikes during the winter time without any marketing actions and without any fundings. Don't do this. Instead of that, our bike sharing is currently, or it's more often contract-based. So the cities make tenders, and it's a big competition for many companies right now. And the advantage is that you have, from a city perspective, service level agreements. So you can say how many bikes have to be on a station, or it should be station-based, or it should be flexible, or in this way. So you, as a from a city perspective, you can control the provider much more. On the other hand, yes, the competition is not so big, and you have to take some budget in your hands and spread it to the operators. Yeah, this is also a city perspective, but from our perspective, it works very well. And bike sharing, you have to think, bike sharing is very effective lever to get more people on bikes. So you have to imagine on one go, the people use one bike and they are visible on one go because they use the same bikes. And all the people in the city recognize the bikes. Yeah, so this is also a very good lever to increase cycling in generally.
Thank you very much. Alexander, could you please explain, probably especially for the people from outside of Germany, your case and how you operate sort of in cooperation with nextbike? What's the unique case about these localized mobility services and how you operate them?
Yeah, I can do that. So basically, we are the public transport company in Dresden. We work together with the city, but also with nextbike, which is our operator. So we are basically the heads, and they are our limbs, so to say. And we also have mobility stations that we are building for 6 years. So we have like a mixture of infrastructure and offering. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Exactly, and we try to have an integrated, so we try to integrate the bike sharing service in our public transport company service. So we have buses, trams, and bikes, and think it as one.
Thank you very much. Christine, what is your perspective? Because you bring a broader perspective than just bikes. You also operate other devices, other micromobility devices. What is holding micromobility back right now? What is the future? And how do you get more people into sharing, not just from bikes?
I'd say almost the first breaking point is political will. Really wanting things to change. We still, especially in Germany, we still are very protective of our private cars. There's very little effort to kind of make a change in each of the cities, and that is a factor to, for example, having infrastructure changes. I really envy like all your measures. I'd love to see that more also in our geo. So you have to want it, and as a city, you have to implement it in a number of ways. And I think the key really is threefold. It's the actual wheels on the ground. So you need proper bike infrastructure. You need proper bike and scooter parking, so micromobility parking spaces. You might be aware that, especially for scooters, there's always a lot of complaints, and they're standing around. Of course, new mobility needs space as well. Like we have millions and millions of users every day, but if they don't get the space to ride properly or to park properly, that is an issue. Then the digital connection, it has to be really convenient for users to just use it, book your public transport ride and hop on a scooter or a bike, whatever. It has to be like intuitive and easy to handle. And last but not least, needs to be affordable. So some cities now tend to consider us as an income model. So if they raise the fees skyrocketing, it's just impossible to offer affordable pricing for customers. So it's really the triangle of commercial, physical, and digital to really make it attractive to make people switch, and then really be integrated in the ecosystem locally. So it's obviously the mobility public transport provider as kind of the orchestrator for eco-mobility locally. That is really the key to having a good alternative, and everyone can pick and choose from the variety of offers. There's so great mobility offers on the streets, really. Let's make it easy to use them,
Okay, thanks. So we heard that the cities and cities around the globe have to do more. But what do they have to do? Is it just throw money at providers? Is it indirect subsidies like free parking? Is it tax breaks? What are the most important and most impactful measures cities have to do to get people more into sharing? Maybe Anton. What's the most impactful?
I don't know.
I don't know. You don't know. Well, let's discuss.
I mean, from a city perspective, we see city is still, a platform for different means of transportation. And in our case, obviously, the policy is to get more people choosing different means of transportation rather than cars, right? And it doesn't really matter in the end if it's public transport, if it's shared bikes, if it's own bikes, if it's feet, which is the best way of travel for like ages, right? For us, it's not such a big difference, and I think from the city perspective, also we are a platform for everything, for all the means of transportation. So having a policy so that active modes, which is cycling or scooter sharing or whatever it is using, so the infrastructure will help the business as well. Because if people will feel safe riding a bike, if it's own bike, if it's TIA bike or whatever bike, it will work out. About the schemes, I think it's very individual for the city. In our case, we're still not offering, we have a contract which is very long contract with one company which does the sharing. Now we don't have any other contract, but we'll probably have some kind of contract so that we have a system around the city. Especially we have hills, so we have to have more electric bikes and so on. So it's like it is an issue, but yeah. Our priority is still to build the infrastructure and like to have it safe and convenient and very comfortable.
Maybe then, Christina, the question for you, what do you think, what these cities have to do? Is it really throwing money at the problem? Is it building more infrastructure? What really helps to bring people more into sharing?
I think all of us have to have a different role to play in order to make eco-mobility more attractive. And from a city perspective, of course, it's infrastructure, but it's also reducing the privileges for private cars. I mean, as we know, space distribution, public space is so extremely valuable, and we're like literally wasting so much. And driving for cars, parking for cars, like there can be so much more be done with this type of space. That will be the city role. Then, of course, users have to play a role in terms of shifting their behavior, which is also a whole different psychological set to make it more attractive, more reliable, for them to just keep the car where it is and use the alternatives that are convenient. And as a provider, it's our task to make it attractive, available, have secure vehicles, of course, offered. So everyone has a role to play in this ecosystem to make it work. And it really is about de-incentivizing private car use. Because it's correct what you say. If you have better infrastructure, then people feel safer, they pick up alternative modes. If they know the tram is running, then they trust the alternatives more. And this is something where we can all contribute from a different angle to make that happen.
So what do we need more? Do we need more the carrot or do we need more the stick?
Both.
So we need both. To what degree? Or is it just an interplay of carrots and sticks all the time?
Depending on whom we're using that, right? But from a city perspective, the cars are never the answer, because the minute you start building more car infrastructure and more, doing better for cars, the more cars will come. And that's the same, the more you'll do for cycling, the more cyclists will come. The more you will do for pedestrians, the more pedestrians there will be. So it's like it's just the rule which is in the books for quite some time now. When you do good infrastructure for any mean, it will be there. But the car isn't an effective and efficient way of moving around the city, sadly, because most of the trips in the cities are very short ones, are 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, which are, could be done by other means. So if it's a stick for the cars, I would agree with that.
Yes, and maybe also we have to do something in communication, of course, yes. So to convince the car user to jump on a bike or to jump to public transport. And if the offer of public transport works very well and sharing modes are integrated, it will work. And if it's also cheap, it will also work, yes? So this is also a push and pull, finally, of everything. Also parking management, yeah? If it's difficult to find a parking slot in the city now, of course, many people won't go anymore by car in the city. So this is actually a way how it works.
And just to add, it's not necessarily about more money. I mean, it's always welcome, don't get me wrong, but it's about the distribution of funding. And right now we are in a time where public budgets are cut all over the place. Nobody has funding anymore. But what's like all the cuts seem to affect the sustainable modes of transport, like the national train or infrastructure and such things. But we still invest in an autobahn in Berlin. So it's kind of, the priorities need to be straight. Even with the budget that's available, that's getting shorter and shorter, it has to be distributed in the right incentives. And we all know about the emission targets for transport sector, but I'm really missing the roadmap how we're going to get there, because there's no political action in a lot of cities, also at federal level.
When we talk about emission goals, do you think we are on track with sharing and caring? So should we put more the stick? Should we go more for stricter measures? How do we get to more emission goals? Because currently we're not on track. And right now, sharing is there, but sharing doesn't really play a role in the overarching picture, I believe. So it's just a very small percentage-wise.
Yeah.
No. It plays now a role. So we started 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and I had always to explain what is nextbike, what is bike sharing. What? Bike sharing? Shared bike? We have our own bikes. And now I don't have to explain it anymore. So there is a change. It's not the end, of course, and we are still on the track, but there is a change. And I think more people are now convinced, and we also have more people to convince that it's a purpose for everybody of us. I always ask the people, where do you want to live? At a car highway or at a cycling highway? And the answer is so clear and simple. So.
Yeah, but if we look at the overall modal split in Germany or other
Yes.
European countries, like it's a single-digit percentage or even less than 1% of people using the modal split for shared bikes. So it's still a long way to go. But the question for me is, how do we get there? Do we do the current services better, faster, cheaper? Or do we have more qualitative improvements? What do we do better in terms of providing bikes, in terms of city?
Yeah, so I think in terms of CO2 emissions, you really have to view it as a whole system. And I mean, the money is there, so I agree with the others, but it's on the wrong place. So we need way more trams, buses, and bikes in the system to have like this modal split get it higher, basically.
Okay, anyone else jump in?
Yes, and we have political goals. Yeah, we have in 2035 we have no Verbrennermotor. What is
Combustion engine.
anymore new Verbrenner. So how do we achieve this goal? So it has to be a switch.
Now that brings me sort of to my stick, because I believe if we really want to make a change, we have to be pretty drastic, because right now we're not on track, we're not achieving our goals. So what do we do? Like, and we just can't be like fast about it, cheaper. Yes, we can offer like nextbike for half the price. Will we get like 20, 30, 50, 100% more people into that? I don't know. So what's really the trigger for pushing and moving things forward?
I think it's convenience, safety, and pricing. Like, you have to start with the user, and if you have these three right, then like that's really a game changer. And also in our sector, I mean, Tia is now 5 years old, only youngster in the game, but millions and millions of riders, increasing numbers of users. With only in Germany 140 cities, so it's the appetite is there, like from the early ages when it was still kind of digital early adopter playground. It's now really matured into a commuter mode, and like, yeah, I think it's really the triangle of affordable, convenient, available. Yeah.
And this is what we also can say in Dresden and also the other rental figures at nextbike. So it increases year by year.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So, and we now have to go to the rural areas, and there comes the behalf of the city thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So the rural areas are still, there are the commuters, yeah, and they are going every morning to the city, and they are the cause of the traffic jam. But for such free providers, it's not a business case to go to the rural areas, and there we need the subsidies, in my opinion.
That's a good point. That's a good question. Like, I think we have all the solutions for urban centers. We know micromobility works.
Yes.
We know even car sharing works. We know all that stuff. We don't have anything for rural or semi-rural areas, because business-wise, it's not really an effort. And if we go for subsidies, it's really, really expensive to bring things like nextbike, call a bike, whatever these stations are. So that's not really a business case. So what do we do there? What about rural people who live in rural areas? Will it still be in 20 years? Just car is the way to go? Will it be the car? Or is it any other?
I hope not, and that's also the thing about our city planning, which was there for ages. That it's a the cities have been sprawling and they're still sprawling, and that's one of the biggest issues we have in Vilnius now, because there's quite a lot of, especially young families, moving out of the city to the suburbs, and they create those consequences. I won't call them problems. That's a consequence of so many things. but I just think that the sharing is not, it's not the silver bullet or the answer, just the sharing. It's the system, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes you just need to see either bring public transit to closer to the people living there, because sometimes the city is even like that, right? Just to bring the small bus which would collect people there and then get to the train station or whatsoever, or cycling, or even people don't have in their mindset that they can cycle. And I had this actually conversation with a Dutch guy who started living in Berlin, and his friends never had this thought in their head that they can use a bicycle to get to the train, because they were using a bus for all their life, and the buses are sometimes not convenient, they're not on time or whatsoever, and they were frustrated for so long, and until that mindset changes, that you can actually get a bike, doesn't matter again if it's a shared bike or a private bike, right? That you can actually get a bike to the train station. It will be always same, like 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatsoever, because with a bike, you can always predict your journey time. There is no traffic jams, or if there is a traffic jam, you'll still can go around it. Changing this mindset, and I wanted to say that education and obviously the new generation growing up is very important, because in some cases, people in their 50s or 60s, they're probably not gonna change that flexibly as people who are growing up, right? For those who are at schools, we can show them that there are so many different possibilities, and that's the future business for you guys. So, but I mean, I think, I believe that there's quite a lot potential there of people even not getting their driver's license in the end, so that they have so many choices around, so that you don't need that, and that's where we'll have a huge change.
And the more people are changing the mode, the more pressure we will get to adapt the
city.
infrastructure.
Yeah. Yes.
Infrastructure, yeah. This works also very well on both sides. But yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting to also have the decrease in driver's license. So you can tell that a lot of the younger generation already kind of is used to all the alternatives and the new modes. So and it's really gotten expensive as well, at least here in Germany, I've heard. So it's been a while for me, but yeah, that's definitely kind of an indicator of how the mobility mindset is with another generation. But also to your point on rural areas, like in our case, for the last 5 years, for example, in Berlin, we have now kind of grown the business area more and more, and now it's 300 square kilometers. So it's really, really far out, really far north, west, all the directions. It can work to include the suburbs, because it's a growth, it's an awareness process, it's the education, it's kind of for people to also see the shift and the offer, and then it also works. Like it wouldn't have worked 5 years ago if we would have dumped vehicles somewhere in Karo, we would have picked them up a month later again. But this way, it's a development also. And I think we have to think in terms of not building a system and expecting it to work the next day, but really letting things grow, accepting the shift with a mindset shift and also a kind of infrastructure shift, and then things can develop. And also in rather smaller areas, in Hamburg-Langenhagen, in Hannover-Langenhagen and so on, it's maybe not in a Mecklenburg-Vorpommern village, but there's potential there. And yeah, it can grow as well.
And then about the future, because okay, we could do it in some sort of suburbish of Hanover or something, but we won't do it anywhere in a city or even small city, at least by declaration, of 10,000 or 5,000 or 20,000 people. That's usually not going to work out. But will it be maybe the future with some form of sharing, bike sharing operator, bringing your private bike into the sharing operations, what we have done with car sharing and see with car sharing, like peer-to-peer business models? How will the future maybe look like? Will it be the integration from private bikes to sharing, from private bikes to not sharing? What will the future be like?
I think it's going to be up to cities also to allow for trial and error period.
Okay.
Like you have to make an offer, some things work, it depends on the people, depends on their needs locally to just see and adapt also to the needs. Have a consultation, ask the citizens, what's your daily commute? Do you have to pass by the kindergarten, or like where's your workstation? Do you have an enterprise, like a local business that needs the employees to commute there? And then you can fine tune out of, that's the nice thing really. If you look around here, it's such a wonderful, colorful variety of mobility offers and shared mobility, private mobility. As long as it's sustainable, it should be kind of privileged, and also, of course, public transport. And then you have a wonderful mix that might fit your community, and you could just, pick and choose. That's the beauty.
Well, we heard before, and I think we all agree that mobility is highly local. Have you seen any positive impacts or any impacts at all if people have dedicated mobility departments, mobility managers, or even a mobility strategy? Because some cities do have that, but others don't. From your daily experience, is that any way different? You obviously have that in Dresden, but you're sort of a larger city. Have you seen that in surrounding cities around Dresden?
Yes, we're currently we talk to other cities who also want the system. Right now we have a tender which is going until 2027, and afterwards we will try to also implement it in rural areas, because their sharing is basically a very easy and cheap strategic tool for cities to implement bikes and to have to introduce and reintroduce bikes to people. And also new types of bikes as well, like cargo bikes or e-bikes, which people can also try and maybe buy later.
Thanks very much. As time is sort of running out, I'd like to close this wonderful session with a closing statement for each and one of you. Probably Anton, just a quick question. I know resources are always scarce, but if resources wouldn't be scarce, what would you do? How would the perfect city look like in terms of infrastructure or something for shared mobility?
Wow.
In 10 seconds.
That's a very good question. I imagine the city as a city free of citizens having free choice to choose the best way of traveling. And I'm hoping that business, as sharing business, can come with that solution and that proposal for the citizens. But also, it's a very, we still need it to be a vibrant city and a livable city and so on. So we have to be careful not to clutter it. So it's also part of very good, very liberal, very open, but also a bit regulated when needed.
Okay, quick question for our closing.
For me, a city is a holistic thing. So it's not only bike sharing, it's not only public transport, it's everything, and it's also parking management. And for me, a big lever is a tempo limit in the city. I do not need always a cycle path or somewhere if everybody drives only 30 kilometers per hour. So, and it will be safe, and more kids will be on the streets, more women will be on the streets, and also more cyclists and everybody.
Thank you. Alexander, so how does the city of Dresden look in 2030? How many people are on bikes in a couple of years?
Yeah, I think, I hope the city will be efficient, green and safe, so that nobody needs to have fear in the public transport or the public space.
Okay, then lastly, Christina, just a broad question. How do you think the future, just open up the field of micromobility, not just bikes, but also scooters or other forms look like? How do you envision Tier or Tier Dot in 5 years?
In my mind, hopefully we have also the political mind shift towards having a privilege for or a preference for eco-mobility in all its colors and all its variations. And then already, and I love the safety. You're not scared to ride a bike. Yeah. Like that would be wonderful. Yeah. And then I think all of us have a place to play in there. Like it can be all colorful, of course, right here, but that's just having a preference for alternatives and incentivizing alternatives that are sustainable. That would be the way to go.
Yes, and sometimes we will use a car.
Yeah.
Even the car.
we want to close on that note. Other than that, thanks very much for participating, and thank you all for tuning and listening. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.